Welcome to Moody Reads, and welcome to a weekend reading check-in. I kind of hate that I started all of this calling these weekend reading check-ins because, of course, we're not even that far in, and it is now no longer the weekend when I'm making these. But it's midweek now. Maybe it will be the weekend when this actually gets posted. To start things off, in a very exciting turn of events, I actually did read the book that I talked about potentially being my next read last check-in, and it was You Weren't Meant to Be Human, which is Andrew Joseph White's upcoming book. And it absolutely blew my mind. I was anticipating that this would be really good, and it absolutely was. This is his adult horror debut, and it focuses on a trans autistic main character in his early 20s who has gotten caught up in this alien cult and is forced to bring to term the baby that he's been impregnated with. So given all of that, you could imagine the content warnings. I tried to put as many as I could on Storygraph, which I can link. But he also lays out the content warnings at the beginning of the book and assume the worst with them because there's a lot of kind of graphic stuff in here. And it really is trying to have a conversation about kind of a lot of the political climate, obviously. Looking at pregnancy, and I think also looking at some kind of nuanced things when it comes to transphobia. There's also a lot of really interesting stuff in terms of how the character relates to his past self. Throughout the book, you kind of get little flashback pieces, so you're building the understanding of where he came from, but there's also kind of development there, I think, in how he understands his past self. So that was really resonant. I just loved so much about this, and I cannot wait for it to come out because I'm immediately buying a copy in order to reread it. After that, I read Convenience Store Woman, which I've been wanting to read for a while, and since it's Women in Translation Month, it seemed like a good time. And this one was really interesting. This focuses also on a very obviously autistic main character who works at a convenience store. She starts working at this convenience store in college, and even after college, she decides, instead of kind of going off in a different career direction, that she wants to continue to be a part of the convenience store. And throughout the course of the story, there are some things that end up challenging that. So this meditates on capitalism, as well as gender roles and agency in different ways. I thought it was really good. I do think that it could have gone further, especially they introduced this male character who ends up being kind of a weird, I don't even know if I would call him a foil, but he's definitely saying some different things. But he definitely helps kind of tell the story or the commentary that this is trying to develop. I do think that it was really good overall, but I think that it could have been pushed a little bit further. But I can definitely see why people talk about this one a lot. After that, I ended up starting Gender is Really Strange, which is an educational graphic novel. I kind of started it, and I will pick it back up. I just wasn't feeling, I think, this particular thing, so I ended up kind of doing other stuff. So I don't really have much to say about it because I stopped it fairly quickly just because it just wasn't the vibe. There were a couple of audiobooks that I also started and stopped that I probably won't return to anytime soon, to be honest. One is, of course I didn't write down the titles, The Night Flyer, which is about Harriet Tubman, and it talks about her story, specifically looking at her spirituality and spiritual stories of other Black enslaved women at the time. And while she's usually spoken of as kind of an eccentric, the author is basically pointing out how the people who called her that were not Black women. The majority of the people who told her story, who knew her more directly, weren't Black women. So when you actually look into other spiritual Black women's experiences, her eccentric nature kind of doesn't seem so weird. That's at least what I got from the introduction. It seems really cool. I just wasn't in it with the audio at that current moment. Obviously, I stopped both of the audiobooks that I started, so I don't know if I'm out of that era or if I just needed something different. It is one that I would like to return to in the future, in theory, though. The other one that I started, I cannot remember the title of it all. It's a fire metaphor. So I'll put it on the screen, but this was a young adult novel told in verse, and it features a Black sapphic couple and arson. And it's all told, there is some incident that you don't quite know what it is that kind of frames the story, and it's however many days before this incident. It's clear that these two girls were like best friends who were like more than friends and navigating that. It is said in the book that there is a volatile kind of nature with one of them in particular. And again, arson. Towards the beginning of the book, they light some stuff on fire and get in trouble. I imagine that's going to come back at some point. I stopped both of these. I feel like I was like maybe 15% of the way into. This one, I don't know if I'm going to return to, just because the fire metaphor is so heavy-handed throughout the whole thing. Like it just keeps getting repeated. Things are hot or volatile or flammable, or they're literally setting a fire. And it's just kind of a lot. That between that and feeling very picky about the audiobooks at the moment, it just didn't happen, and I don't know if it's going to happen. If you've read this and you think that it's worth reading, you can absolutely let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll pick it back up later. But I just was really not feeling it. And at that point, I pivoted to some independently published or like non-traditional kind of works, starting out with some zines. I talked about some of the zines that I recently got, I think a couple weeks ago, and I looked at these two that are by Elliot Gianni from Craft or DIY. You should definitely check out their stuff. These are some cute kind of smaller ones that they have, but there's a lot on there, and there's a lot that I want to get. They have a lot about queer stuff, plants, other topics like picking out your own mask or air purifier. The two that I got are some of the smaller zines. This one is largely like artwork focused, small affirmations. So this was really nice to look at, and definitely one that I'm going to keep kind of around to kind of glance at more. And then What's in a Name, which was it's not quite a comic, but it's heavily illustrated, and it's kind of their story of choosing a name. And then staying with that, I also read a chapbook that was independently published, Diary of a Pregnant Boy by Agee, who I'm suddenly unsure if I actually pronounced her last name right, but he is on BookTube and like Fibercraft Tube, I suppose. I got this a while ago, along with one other one that I thought I had somewhere around here. And I'm planning to read his other one relatively soon, probably for Shorty September. I've had these for a while. I'm not even sure if they're still for sale. I'm pretty sure I read parts of both of them when I originally got them in, like, I don't know, 2022, 2021. I don't know what time is, but it was really great. After that, I pivoted to fanfiction. I used to be all in the world of fanfiction. However, the past like 5 to 7 years, it's been not so much. So I have like annual or semi-annual kind of dips back into it. I think it's a little hard for me to stay in some of those spaces just because the main fandom that I was involved in, the like original works, are now so soiled for me, and it was such a big part of my personality. Um so I will still occasionally dabble in the fandom that I was dabbling in this time was Summer Sons, which is amazing because when I first read Summer Sons in 2022, there was hardly any fan fiction. In fact, the main sections that I was looking for at the time was anything focused on Riley, which there was none, and fan fiction that was like throuple fan fiction that focused on a not dead Eddie, Sam, and Andrew. Now, there are 6 in that category, and I think maybe like 3 that kind of have Riley as the main character, or at least one of the main people in whatever ship. So I was reading through some of those. I feel like there is nothing that has stuck out well enough to me to maybe like recommend widely on YouTube. But that was the next thing that I kind of pivoted to. I found a little bit that is pretty good. It's promising, but it's a work in progress, so it's kind of hard to tell. If you have found any really good Summer Sons fan fiction, please recommend it to me. I know that it's never going to get any sort of like prequel or sequel or whatever. It's, I guess, not really that kind of book anyway, so I wouldn't expect it to. But I'm really interested in these characters, and the one work in progress that I really liked actually kind of delves more into their dynamic in a certain way. I just wish that it were like longer and a little bit more involved. But anyways, I think that's a big sign that I need to do a Summer Sons reread, because it's been too long. Pivoting to non-book or book adjacent stuff. I think I mentioned last time the coloring thing. I've still been doing that. Obviously not with audiobooks as much since I've stopped both of the audiobooks that I've read, but I have been watching it, or I have been coloring while watching TV, which I forgot to mention last time. Part of it is that I'm still just like rewatching Drag Race is a big part. I've been rewatching season 7, which, I mean, I feel like a lot of the earlier seasons are all each iconic in their own right, but this season has Trixie and Katya. And Trixie and Katya have also been rewatching this one. So I think I started the rewatch at a really good time because they've gotten podcasts where they kind of respond to it. So I've been watching the episode and then watching the Untucked, which is on YouTube and not Paramount with the other Untucks. And then watching Trixie and Katya's overview. And I just got to the episode with the standoff between Pearl and RuPaul, which is a mess. I think they really did pick on Pearl too much, and I think that's even more obvious on the rewatch than it was the first time I saw it. The other main TV thing is also, it's even more of a throwback. My partner's been super into Kathy Griffin, so we've been watching some of her old stand-up and My Life on the D-List, as well as her new YouTube stuff. She kind of got ousted for posting a picture with Donald Trump's head, and people freaked out, despite the fact that people have done worse than that with past presidents. If you'll remember the like Tea Party protests when Obama was elected. But anyways, these are shows from the early 2000s, so there are parts of it that totally aged like milk. But it's reality TV, chill, whatever. Nothing really intense. I feel like that's been the majority of the TV that I've been able to even watch that much, really, for the past while. So, moving on from there, we can talk about book haul things. I didn't go to the library this week, so the only things that I have are some things that I ordered maybe like a week or a week and a half ago, but they came in the mail, so I'm going to talk about them. I got these on Pango, and I couldn't not get them because two of these books I've been wanting to get, and there's nowhere else I'm going to find them for like under $10. A couple of these were like $3 or $6 a piece, and the other two were like a couple bucks, and the shipping was free. So first I have Elite Capture: How the Powerful Took Over Identity Politics and Everything Else, which I have heard a lot about. I was kind of surprised that it was so small, just because of the way that I've heard people talk about it. I kind of assumed that it would be longer, but I'm excited. And then the other one that I was really wanting, has been on my list to get for a long time, is Conflict is Not Abuse by Sarah Schulman. I've been doing a read through of a bunch of Sarah Schulman stuff, particularly her fiction as of recent. But the first book by her that I read was nonfiction, The Gentrification of the Mind, which I love and highly recommend. Her fiction is like not for everybody, but I find it really interesting. It's like late 80s, early 90s, weird, sad, messy, queer literary fiction. Conflict is Not Abuse, I actually started on audiobook a couple of years ago, and I was like, this is one that I'm really going to want to read physically and take notes on, so I should just get a copy. And it was harder to order kind of through the bookstore that I work at, and plus I thought that getting it secondhand would be good anyways, and I'm glad I waited because I don't know where else I would have found this for as cheap. I'm actually currently in the middle of Let the Record Show, and have been for a while, but in theory I would like to get that finished up in the next couple of months, so that I can move on to some of her other books, and other books that are adjacent to Let the Record Show by other people. I think so far as her books go, this might be the next one that I want to read. And then she also has a newer one, The Fantasy and Necessity of Solidarity, which I think might speak to some of the same things in here, because in both I think she talks about Israel and Palestine, but obviously this one, it was written in 2015, so that'll be the landscape that it's talked about in. So super excited for this one. And then the other ones that I got in this same haul were The Empathy Exams by Leslie Jamison, which I've heard good things about, and Unsex Me Here, which I have not heard about, but sounds really interesting. It is trans short stories, and it's by Nightboat Books, who they published some poetry collections that I've read and really liked. Of course, I can't remember any titles, but Dodd is the main one that I think of. Her collection with that riffs a lot on the myth of Narcissus. And then I believe they also published Sullivan's Diaries, which I've read part of, and is just really cool. Like, the fact that they've been published like that is amazing. So hopefully this will be good. So that is what my reading and entertainment week has been like. Let me know in the comments what you've been reading and enjoying, and thank you all so much for watching. Bye.